Thank you. All right, welcome everybody to the Meet the Candidates night, and to the people watching online, welcome. And we hope that this is an informative evening for you as you make your decisions as to who to vote for in the upcoming general election. Thank you for your active participation in our constitutional republic, and especially in our Syracuse city politics. It's really good to have such an active and informed community as we choose our elected officials. It's such an important thing. Kenneth Hallowell of the Planning Commission will be moderating tonight. And we'll just turn the time over to him and the candidates. Thank you.
Okay, welcome everyone. I think this has been explained for those listening. I'll explain. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer the question, and we will start and we'll just snake through. So the first question will go to Michael Gailey, and he'll start and then go all the way through. Second question will Dave Mon and go all the way through wrap around. So that way everyone gets a chance to hopefully go first and go last. I have some timers here behind me. They'll be holding up the signs. So if you want to show them what signs you have there, our timekeepers, we have a 30-second, a 10-second, and a stop. And so watch for those signs. Hopefully they're bright enough colors you can be able to see them as you're talking. You've all been given the questions ahead of time. I'm not going to go in order of the questions. We'll try and jump around a little bit, try and cover as many of them as we can tonight. I'll give each of you a 1 minute opening statement, and then we'll start with the questions. So if you want to start with Mr. Gailey, if you'll start, and then we'll just go down. Thanks.
I brought my family here in 1982 after I graduated from dental school in Chicago. I knew all about big cities, the L, the freeways weaving in and out. And my children wanted to live closer to where grandma was, and that was here in Syracuse. And we preferred to live rural. The city has certainly changed since 1982. My wife and I brought the first medical dental complex to Syracuse. We were the very first ones. We bought a home across the street from City Hall, and I plowed the sidewalks for City Hall when I plowed the sidewalks for my building. So I love the city. Some have criticized me for my love of the city, but I know a lot about this city. I know a lot about its past. And in order to plan for the future, I think you need to know a lot about the past. So if I've offended you because of something I've said about our history, I'd apologize, because that's not what it's meant. It's meant to keep you in touch with what we are, what Syracuse was and what it can become.
My name is Dave Mon. I've lived in the city for quite some time. I've been serving on the city council for 5+ years. I am running for mayor because I believe that we need to change some things and get back to some of the things that people are endeared and love about this city. I have quite a diverse background. I believe that what I bring to the table as mayor is experience that is needed here in the city, because I've grown up a lot of places. I grew up in the military or with my parents in the military. So I moved around, saw a lot of different places, moved away for graduate school. So I've seen other places and seen how other cities work. I also work for a business, work in business development. And I think that's our greatest need right now. We need people to reach out to the community and be active, not passive, in business development. We've been passive for several years now, and we really need active work to get that to be successful.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Carver. I've lived in Syracuse for just almost 7 years now. I am a single mom, and I have a different view perspective as my counterparts do. I see things a little bit differently from a different situation in life, and I think I can bring a little more to the table as to the information that they receive from different areas of the state.
Thank you, Mr. Hellwell. My name is Brett Cragen. I'm running for City Council. I do appreciate everybody who's participating tonight, both here in person and online. What we are doing here is important. I wish that there were more members of the public who had an interest in what is taking place here. Over the next few years, there is going to be lots of change that occurs in our city. And we have the ability right now to shape that change and to either make Syracuse the way it needs to be, the way we want it to be, or to shape how things look and see what is going to happen. I've spent the last 4 years on the Planning Commission. I've seen a lot of the changes that have taken place. I see a lot of opportunity that can occur in the future. And I think that we have a great thing going if everybody will work together, act civilly, and create a good plan for our city. Again, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Savage.
My name is Jordan Savage. I've lived in Syracuse for over 12 years. I am an engineer by trade, which means I enjoy looking at data and making good decisions based on that data. I ran for city council because there were a lot of issues I saw. I ran 5 years ago, and in that time, I have achieved every single item that I had on my list of my agenda items to get done. So I plan to continue doing the same thing. One issue I've run into is I think we need to control growth. I've been in a minority on the council currently, and it's been projected that we will reach build out of Syracuse in 2050. But at this rate, it looks like someone's trying to go for 2030. I would like to go back to our original plan. Let's see if we can't slow down the growth. But at the same time, we do need to attract those quality businesses that will help us to grow and get the services we want here in Syracuse without sacrificing our virtue in that.
Thank you, Mr. Watson.
Thank you. My name is Paul Watson. I am a 14-year resident of Syracuse. I live here with my wife and 2 kids, and we love living here. And I made the mistake, just kidding, but I got involved and I got engaged in politics this last year and in things that I felt were important to me. And so when I engaged in dealing with something that was important to me, other than 2 members of the current council, I felt that our voices as citizens were not being heard. And so that's one of the most important things to me and one of the reasons I decided to run. I want to be a voice for those citizens who feel like, hey, I'm just being overlooked. My opinions don't matter. The council's just going to do whatever they want. We do have some big challenges upcoming. And I think the most important thing that we can do as a community is get involved and make our voices heard so that we don't change everything that we love about Syracuse just for the sake of growing as fast as we can. So thank you so much.
Thank you, all of you. First question, we'll start with Mayor Daley and work our way down. What do you do when people don't agree with your point of view? Please give a recent example.
I am a big proponent in my practice. We reviewed a book every month. One of the books I provided my staff was one called Crucial Conversations. And if you don't believe in crucial conversations, you need to be a dentist. When you come at somebody with a syringe and you're going to poke it in their mouth. So that book taught me that it begins with listening to learn. So rather than getting into an argument with somebody, what I would do is listen first, because there may be things from their perspective that I haven't seen, and then start for the heart. I would begin to wonder, what am I really trying to accomplish? What do I really want to have happen? I don't see compromise as a bad thing when we both can agree that we need to make a compromise so that we can both agree on a greater value. So I don't know that I'm skilled in crucial conversations, but I really try.
Thank you. Mr. Mon?
I believe firmly that if we're going to get something done successfully, we have to work together on it. And so first and foremost, sure, I go out and I do a lot of homework and I do a lot of research before I come to council meetings. So I bring with me that perspective. But if other people have other perspectives, I'm willing to listen and understand what part of that might incorporate in the end solution. But quite frankly, when people in the community come out to me and say, here's what we think, then I need to have good enough information that it will help convince them, or maybe I should be listening to them. I've written about that several times on my posts on my Facebook page, saying that if I can't share my perspective with you so that you understand, maybe I'm not listening hard enough to what the critical part of the issue is. And I do believe in defending the city, but I also believe that first and foremost, you've got to put the city first. So I'm not looking for those special interests that might have their perspective that they want to make sure is heard.
Thank you, Ms. Carver.
I feel like if someone disagrees with your point of view, then that's your option to learn a little more. So share with me your point of view, and then share with me how you came to that point of view, and then let's talk about it and figure it out. See if we can find similarities to start with, with both of our point of views, and then we can build from there. Start with what we both have in common, and if it's nothing at all, start with maybe something we can find that we have in common, and then we can build off of it from there.
Thank you. Mr. Cragen?
Yes, thank you. As an attorney, I spend a good part of my days interacting with people who don't agree with my positions or my client's point of view. When this happens, I think it's important to follow what I call the 3 C's, and that is to communicate, collaborate, and cooperate. As has been mentioned, communication is very important, and having communication to understand the perspectives of everybody involved is very important. Once that is done, there's an opportunity to collaborate together, to have a chance to try and understand what each person is trying to do as far as their goals, and then have an opportunity to cooperate and see if there's a chance to try and make a concession. I do think it's important that civility be maintained at all times. It's okay to disagree, but there still needs to be respect shown. When that is done, good options and good results can be reached.
Thank you. Mr. Savage?
I think it's important for all of us to realize that differing opinions are a good thing. I hope that and when I go into a discussion, there is someone else that can give me a different point of view than my own. Because I do not believe I have a monopoly on good ideas. And I may not understand everything. And so just like these guys have said, these are the playground rules. I mean, you got to sit down, figure out how to share the ball. You got to sit down and work together to try and figure out how we can come to an agreement to actually get something done. If we all just dig a trench and sit in our corner, this will be a really crappy city council. But if we can build a bridge and actually talk to each other, figure out what we can agree on and work from there, there's a lot of hope. And I think that's a good thing. And so again, I think the path forward is to realize that differing opinions are fine and that there is common ground and we need to find it.
Thank you. Mr. Watson?
Thank you. So I'm a small business owner. I happen to own a property management company. So I work with small landlords and tenants on a daily basis. So I deal in conflict resolution all day. So I'm constantly dealing with people's points of views that don't necessarily align with what I have to do or what I have to accomplish. I think the first thing, the most important thing when you're dealing with a differing point of view is make sure that you're listening and trying to understand that person's point of view rather than just projecting why you think you're right all the time. You really need to give them an opportunity to be understood and be heard. And when we do that, I think we can sometimes find common ground or sometimes find why we're misunderstanding each other. And so listening is first and foremost. And then secondly, try and find that common ground or, how do we come to a common solution with each other? I think that's important.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Mr. Mon. The question is, does the city need a large park on the edge of the city, or would the money be better spent improving the current parks the city has?
This is an interesting question because I believe that a large park certainly serves a lot of needs that we have, and our programs are growing, and we have to be able to make sure that we can serve as many people as possible. But at the same time, I think that we have to be careful that we're spending money where it makes the most sense. When we first talked about a large park that we would build, my first thought was we're going to have to go and do some fundraising. We're going to have to put a lot of effort into making sure that the burden doesn't fall solely on our citizens, because it's a price tag that we just can't manage. This latest proposal that didn't go through would have put us in debt for another 28 years. And that's a problem for me. I don't think that anything that we do in the city should put us in debt that long. It's not fair to the citizens. We're basically putting you in, making sure that your children pay for this when they're parents.
First, I'd like to say Kaysville has one of these parks. And after talking to a few people, I don't think anybody's even contacted a city that's already done this to see if it was beneficial for them or worth it for them, or if it even really made a difference for them. Is it more of a headache for the city? Is it more of a benefit for them? And I'd also like to point out that there are parks within our own city at the moment that don't receive the attention that they should. And it's no secret that I'm a huge advocate for the equestrian park over there. And I think there's a lot that needs to be done over there. The city doesn't maintain that park at all. They don't do anything over there. It's the kids that ride there, and it's the dads and the parents that do it all. That's one park that doesn't even get touched by our Parks and Recreation. But yet we're going to build another park that our Parks and Recreation have to take care of when they're not even taking care of their guy.
Thank you. Mr. Cragen?
My answer is yes. Many credible studies have shown that a park provides many benefits to the community as a whole. One needs only to research organized sports lowers crime in Google to find multiple articles to support the idea that sports can promote mutual respect and tolerance, teach social and interpersonal skills, and keep participants from falling into a cycle of antisocial behavior, violence, crime, and drug use. Other credible studies have indicated that city parks and open space improve our physical and psychological health, strengthen our communities, and make our cities and neighborhoods more attractive places to live and work. Numerous studies have shown that social, environmental, economic, and health benefit parks bring to a city and its people. I think that it does need to be done in a financial responsible way. I think that it can be done in a financial responsible way. And if all the pieces are put together, that can be a great benefit to our community.
Thank you, Mr. Cragen. Mr. Savage?
So first and foremost, I'm a dad. My kids play soccer. We have a great time recreating. But for about the past 10 years, my kids have not played a single game in Syracuse, not because we don't want to, but it's because our parks are always full. We have every single square foot of our parks programmed. Founders is constantly doing football. We have soccer, rec soccer all over. And so if you're anything other than those sports, there's not really a place for you in Syracuse. And that's not okay. We need to make sure that everyone can play here in Syracuse. We go to all of the surrounding cities, we spend money there, and all that money is something I would like to be here in Syracuse. So I think there is a place for a park like this. We need to do it fiscally responsibly. Because at the end of the day, we do have to pay for it. But I do think, much to a lot of the stats that were just presented, this is a good thing for Syracuse. We just need to do it in a good way.
Thank you. Mr. Watson?
Thanks. So, yeah, so everybody, I don't think anybody would disagree that parks are a good thing and that they promote positive things and we can have, good things happen at parks. I really think the key issues here with any project like this is first, transparency to the citizenry and make sure that we're involving the community in a decision like this. So if we feel there is a need for an awesome sports complex, what is the burden going to be to us tax-wise? I for sure think the citizenry should be able to vote on whether or not their taxes are going to be increased to do something like this. So those are my biggest things with this. I think parks are awesome, but really I think we need to involve the community and citizenry in making these types of decisions for our community and let them decide if that tax burden is something that they want to take on, because as we bond things out, taxes aren't going to go down and go away. We just keep adding and adding. So
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Mr. Gailey?
Ken, I really agree with what's been said by most people here. I do believe we need a regional park. I would correct one thing. We would encumber the city for 20 years, not 28. I yield my time.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Ms. Carver. The question is, do you feel the mixed-use zone is meeting the intended purpose or being abused by developers to build more apartments?
I have a very short answer to this after I read this earlier. I do feel that it's being misused. I feel that if developers can, they will. If they can make a buck, they will make a buck. So I hope.
Thank you. Mr. Cragen?
I think that the city council has acted with very good intentions in creating the mixed-use zone. The very purpose of that zone contained in the code is to create a combination of commercial and residential uses. I think that with a new ordinance comes sometimes challenges, and things need to be evaluated and reworked as they're implemented. I think that developers will take advantage of whatever they can do to make the most profit. They're in the business to do that. But I do think that the mixed use zone should stay. I think it should stay intact. And I think as we gain more experience with that, we'll know what to do in order to make it more effective. But it is it is an ordinance that is beneficial to this community, in my view.
Thank you, Mr. Cragen. Mr. Savage?
So when we put together the MXD zone, it was with the intention of drawing a lot of business to Syracuse. And to do that, we would offer some density. What I'm seeing is tons and tons of density and itty bitty commercial. It's like the smallest amount possible. To be honest, I have approved one, but it's because it came with a 3-story business complex that will house offices, and I was okay with that. That's the trade I'm willing to make. But when it's a token, I'll put in a haircutting parlor in the basement and call that my commercial, that's not good enough. If it's going to be good for Syracuse, it needs to be good for Syracuse. We need to make sure that the commercial zone, the commercial part of that, is bringing new services to the community that do good things. If it's just an excuse to build apartments, I'm out, and I will not approve those, and I have not approved those.
Thank you. Mr. Watson?
thank you. So I really don't think this is a question of whether or not the developers will take advantage of it. Developers are in business to make money. It is the responsibility and the job of our city council to protect the interest of our citizens. This is the exact topic that pulled me into politics and why I'm running today. So in one evening, our city council, with a 3-2 vote, approved almost 500 high-density apartment complexes with a smattering of commercial. And so, yes, if we're going to utilize the mixed-use zone, it would have to, in my mind, it would have to contain a significant commercial aspect for me to want to consider something like that. Otherwise, it is high density apartments masquerading as mixed use zone.
Thank you. Mr. Gailey?
I lived in an apartment 17 years with my family. I had a family of 7 living in a 2-bedroom apartment when we finally built our home. Many of us, all of you probably have had an opportunity in early marriage to live in an apartment. Somehow we think those people are less desirable. I lived in an apartment building where now a member of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles of the Church of Jesus Christ was my next door neighbor. I've lived next to people who was the vice president of Texas Instrument. I've lived next to people in apartments that are now heart surgeons. So out of apartments doesn't come just the dregs of society. And in the apartments that we have developed, any tenant must sign an agreement along with their lease that they will leave if they are convicted of any crime. So I think the council has been wise in this.
Thank you. Mr. Mon?
I don't think that the question ever was who lives in the apartments. I have never considered that it's a reflection of the character of the people who move into the apartments that's the concern. To me, there are certain inherent issues with higher density developments and lower density developments, one of which is traffic. I think that Paul's group came forward with a very relevant concern that they couldn't support the traffic for high density in the area that was going to be near his home. I think in other places we have similar situations. I think that the mixed use zone was a complete bait and switch. We were told, we were shown pictures, we were shown photographs as council members. This is what we're talking about. Pictures that reflected maybe a 1/3% of business. But as I put at the table at the time, we have to make sure the code reflects the worst case scenario because it will happen. And that's exactly what happened. We have the worst case scenario.
Thank you. Next question will go to Mr. Cragen. The question is, how much influence should city staff have with elected officials?
I think that the first thing to look at when asking about the weight that city staff should be given is what educational background and experience do the members of the city staff have? We are very fortunate in this city to have very well educated and very experienced people who are diligent, in my opinion, in trying to provide the best result that can be provided for this city. I think that when the city staff offers a suggestion or an opinion, that needs to be carefully weighed, but when that is weighed, it needs to be looked at along with the input that is provided from the citizens and the input that is provided from the other members of commissions and committees that provide also input on decisions that are to be made.
Thank you, Mr. Cragen. Mr. Savage.
I want to go along with what Mr. Cragen just said. We have an amazing city staff. I have been extremely impressed by these individuals. They are experts in their fields. And I think I'd be crazy not to take what they have under advisement. If I want info on roads, I should probably talk to a roads professional. And we have several of those in the community or in the city. Same thing for parks. I highly respect our parks directors and the workers there. If we're making a decision about parks, I think I should ask the people that know about it. So I absolutely think that we should take what they have under advisement, but at the end of the day, they're not the elected official. They are not the ones that have to stand before each of you to say, this is why I made this decision. But at the same time, I do want to let you guys know that I am willing to talk to experts to make a better decision. And I don't think it's wise to ignore staff out of hand if that was the intent of the question.
Thank you, Mr. Savage. Mr. Watson.
Thank you. I think we're going to hear a lot of very similar answers here on this question. As a citizen, I haven't had too much opportunity to interact with city staff here and there, but yeah, I would expect that those staff members that are hired in their various positions are experts in their field. And I think it's absolutely critical when we're evaluating or making decisions on certain topics to get input from experts, and those would be the city staff members. But again, ultimately, we need to represent our citizens' interests. And so that's, if elected, that's what I'm here to do is, evaluate the situation, gather information, take in all those expert opinions, and then again, still be able to make a decision that is best for the citizens of Syracuse. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gailey.
I agree with everything that's been said to this point. I think the problem comes when an elected official thinks he's the master of all trades. And that's been our problem. My opponent sometimes thinks and presents himself as knowing everything about everything. So I'm very proud to have been mentored by some of the best people that I know in our staff.
Thank you, Mr. Mon.
I think there's two parts to this. You hire advisors, which is what we've done with city staff, people who are experts in their field. We should always consult more than one advisor if you really want to get a varied perspective of what the possibilities are. But then you elect decision makers. And I think that that's a real critical differentiation. I can tell you that there's staff who do this amazingly well. They'll give me the pros, they'll give me the cons, they'll tell me the benefits of both sides. But in the end, they realize that I have to answer to the voters, as does every other elected official. I can tell you somebody who does this really well is our financial accountant, or is Steve Marshall. I said to him early on in one of the things, one of our meetings, I said, Steve, I don't want to be sold on what is the answer here. And he said, okay. Now today, he is always saying, here's one side, here's the other side. I'm not going to make up your mind for you. And he does an amazing job because of that. Staff should be more of advisors, not decision makers.
Thank you, Ms. Carver.
Elected officials are elected to keep the city honest, basically. Everyone should be open to educated, straightforward viewpoints and information. That being said, and we have experts in the city, I like a second and third and fourth opinion. I like to know more than just what one person says, because I am not an expert in a lot of things, very few actually. So I rely on education and learning new things and learning the proper way of things. But I learned that from more than one source, because if you stop at one source, then it's cited no matter what. So you got to look for more than one, 2, 3, 4, and make sure they're educated and make sure they're on opposing views as well. So you get more information delivered to you and an ability to make an educated, informed decision. Because like everybody said, we've got people to answer to, you folks.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Mr. Savage. And the question is, how much should Syracuse City fund the Miss Syracuse pageant?
So this is an interesting question because currently we don't fund the pageant. We do give them rental space, and there's a small token, but by and large, the Miss Syracuse pageant raises the money for the pageant themselves. And these young women are amazing. I'm proud to say that we were one of the first cities to get rid of the swimsuit competition because I have 3 daughters and that's not okay. But I have been extremely impressed by these young ladies. They put in service in our community. They are great examples. I've seen how they are active throughout the community. I think the Miss Syracuse pageant is an investment in these young women who are the future of Syracuse. And so I am unwilling to turn the city's back on Syracuse. I think it's a worthwhile endeavor, and I am happy to support it.
Thank you, Mr. Watson.
Thank you. Honestly, I don't know much about the Miss Syracuse pageant. It's something I'd have to look into a little bit more. However, if this is something that the pageant is wanting, I absolutely think they should make that known to the council. I think there's always ways to find or there's always opportunity to find ways to help in these situations, whether it's providing venues or things like that, or if it's providing funding. It sounds like they do fundraising on their own as well, which I think is an invaluable life lesson that is good for anybody participating in the pageant to do. But yeah, if it's important to the community and we need to look at it, I would want to hear from the community and see what could be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gailey.
Early in my administration, 3 or 4 years ago, the pageant people came in and petitioned me wanting to have the pageant sponsored by the city. Based on legal opinion. I sought legal opinion from our attorney and he advised not. And we brought the pageant people in with the attorney and showed them it was in their best interest not to have the city sponsor the whole thing, but just be one of the sponsors and provide the space for them. So I agree. The girls do a wonderful thing. I really love the fact that they do service as opposed to parade themselves around as lovely beauties, although they really are. And I spend a lot of time with those pageant girls in meetings and at events. So I support the pageant, but only as a sponsor, not as the total sponsor.
Thank you, Mr. Mon.
So I believe in having policies that work for all situations. When we were asked as a council, could we raise the prize money for the pageant? I said, well, I don't know that we have prize money in any other place. And I'm not sure that I could agree with that. But I could agree with helping pay for the venue so that you could hold a pageant. Now, the solution to that was they did have R.C. Willey come forward with the amount of money that was used as prize money for said pageant. And I'm okay with that because R.C. Willey can do whatever they want with their money. But with the people's money, I want to make sure that it's a policy that goes across the board. So in other words, if I help supply a facility to hold a concert, I could also help supply a facility for a pageant because that's a consistent policy that I can act on to promote cultural events in the city.
Thank you, Ms. Carver.
So real quick, I don't know who was in charge of taking this swimsuit part out, but genuinely, from a woman's perspective, thank you for that. I think the city did great things by taking that out. I don't know how pageants normally ran. That's another thing I would say to ask other cities and look at how is it, what is the norm for it? Do cities normally sponsor it? Do they normally help out? Because we would want, if you haven't met our young ladies that do this, they're usually, I'm surprised they're not here tonight, honestly. They're just about at every event we do. They're phenomenal young women. They are just lovely, lovely people. But if we could do a little more to help them, if that's the norm, let's do a little better than the norm, is what I would say.
Thank you, Mr. Cragen.
It looks to me like from a review of the budget that the city contributes around $2,500 towards the Miss Syracuse pageant. When looking at things in a totality, I know that the city promotes sports programs that build character and teamwork and different attributes there. I think that this Miss Syracuse pageant with the young people that are involved with that promotes recognition, personal development, communication skills, confidence, handling stress, pressure, and disappointment. I think that anytime we have an opportunity in this city for a reasonable amount of expenditure to promote and build the citizens and the future of our young people, that is something that should be looked at and supported. And I think that's being done from what I've been able to see.
Thank you. This next question will start with Mr. Watson. The question is, what is your opinion of the water restrictions that were in place this year, and should they continue? Do you support metering secondary water, and what could the city do to improve the quality of the secondary water?
Thank you. So, yeah, so obviously we experienced a drought this year, and we're anticipated to experience another drought next year. So I thought that the watering restrictions that the Public Works Department came up with, I thought that was a reasonable solution to a problem that faced our, not only our community, but our entire state. So Yeah, I appreciated them coming up with a solution like that. Do I support the metering of secondary water? I know that would come at great expense. I know there's talks that's going to be needing to come down the line anyway. I'm not a huge proponent of metering it, but I guess if the state requires us to do that, we'll have to do that. But I would rather come up with solutions that we can implement as a community and curtail the issues of drought ourselves before we start metering things. So,
Thank you, Mr. Gailey.
First of all, we give a lot of credit to our Public Works Department for that. However, the credit really needs to go to you citizens. Those of you who did and followed the instructions of our Public Works Department are the ones who really need to get the pat on the back. Two members of the City Council and I toured the Weber Basin Conservancy District where our watershed is, and we learned a lot of things about secondary water. Our secondary water is actually filtered in Mountain Green before it comes here. I didn't realize that. So the question about metering has been proven to be a vehicle, whether we charge more or not. It's a good vehicle for having people understand how much they're using. And in places where metering is used, the use of secondary water goes down automatically because people get a report on how much they're using. So kudos to the whole city for how we handle that. We'll handle it well next year too.
Thank you, Mr. Mon.
In large part, the restrictions that were in place this year were state advisement. Moving to only 2 days a week was something that they put in place. We followed it. It's easy to claim success there, but really we were following a lot of other policies. The citizens did a great job in following the policies as far as what days you could water. It helped our system recharge. It helped us get through a very difficult time. And we basically shared what water we had. And I think that was successful. Hopefully, we won't go through many years like that, but it could happen again. I've expressed during this entire time, I'm very concerned long-term for our water resources. And we can't just keep parting that out again, piece by piece, and dividing it. So as far as water metering goes, right now, that's an unfunded mandate. We can't afford to do it all in one shot. There's no amount of money that the city has that we could just put them in place today.
Thank you, Ms. Carver.
I do definitely support the water restrictions that were in place this last year. And many of the citizens did follow them. And there's a lot of citizens that did not. And we know that as well. I do support metering secondary water. I don't know if that's something that new developments that they would have to put in. I don't know how that works as to who would be responsible for the cost for new developments as opposed to if it goes into old areas in the city. Ladies and gentlemen, even though our water is filtered up at Mountain Green, it ends up in our duck ponds. It would cost us an astronomical amount of money to do any sort of filtering for Syracuse alone. Please do not let your children drink out of your sprinklers. Some of you may find that funny, but Davis Hospital has had many kids admitted every summer when the sprinklers come on, and a lot of them are from Syracuse because we use secondary water. Layton does not. Please don't let your kids drink out of this.
Thank you, Mr. Cragen.
Yes, thank you. I echo what has already been said. I think that the citizens did a great job in managing the water this year. I think that is a wonderful example of what can happen when everybody comes together and works together to accomplish a common goal. So I think that was done in a terrific manner. The state has provided some legislation on secondary water metering. There's some mandates on what needs to happen in the future as far as secondary water metering with new projects by the end of December 2025. There needs to be a plan that this city will need to participate in, which shows how secondary water metering will occur with a date of 2040 for that to be done. So that's my time.
Thank you, Mr. Savage.
So the average household uses between 50 to 100 gallons of water, a culinary water each day. Each time we water our lawns, it's closer to 30,000. So, kind of put that in context, we need to do a lot better. I drove around during several of the rainstorms and I saw a lot of sprinklers on during the rainstorms. We, as citizenry, we did a great job. I also want to give kudos, but we could do better. I would encourage everyone listening to go check out online. You can search for Smart Water Controller rebate. You can get half off a rebate right now and install a smart controller. It takes care of all of it for you. Let's make it easier on us. Let's use technology to help us weather the weather. And also, I want to continue saying, yes, we should put some of the restrictions in. I don't know if we need to go to the same extreme, but we do need to be smarter. We need to look at areas that are not being watered efficiently, like strips, and look at replacing those and just be smarter with the way we use it.
Thank you. Okay, this next question will come back again to Mr. Gailey. The question will be, what are the qualifications of a good mayor and what qualifications would you bring to the city in that position? Starting with Ms. Carver, the question will change to, what are the qualifications of a good council member? What qualifications would you bring to the city in that position? So, Mr. Gailey.
A lot of people think as mayor that I have a vote. My job is simply to help arrive at a decision of 5 members who have a vote. So I really don't have a vote. My job is really outside of the city. I represent this city outside of it with COG, with Wasatch Front Regional Council, with Wasatch Integrated Waste Management. And so one of the qualifications of a mayor is to be able to interact with people and not be known as a problem city. And there was a time when Syracuse was known as a problem city in the county. So I'm hopeful that I can continue that and keep Syracuse on the up and up and maintain those relationships with other mayors and with the county commission.
Thank you, Mr. Mon.
I think the most important thing about a good mayor is somebody who's willing to work hard for the people and put them first ahead of himself. I did not come to this with an agenda. I want the people to feel like they're heard. One of the biggest things that I came to city council with was I wanted people to feel like if they reached out, somebody would respond. And I have done that for all these years. I always respond to those who reach out to me. There are immense important decisions that go on that are on a variety of subjects. You can't be an expert at all. My opponent tonight has accused me of wanting to be an expert at everything. Actually, the truth of that is I want to show up prepared. I want to come to every meeting having done as much homework as I possibly can so that I come with as many opinions from as many people so that I'm representing as many as possible. And I think that's what a real leader does.
Thank you, Ms. Carver.
I think some of the qualifications for anybody that is an elected official is have an open mind and be willing to learn. You can't make a decision on something you know nothing about. And when you do, it doesn't go over well. And then you have to defend that decision. And you should be required to defend that decision. I think I have a pretty good knack for explaining things in a very straightforward and defined way that removes people's blinders and the romanticism of situations. It's all well and good about saying this will work, but show me when it has. Show me where it's worked. Show me where it hasn't worked. Let's get a little more education into it. And one of the most important things, I think you have to have a pretty strong, solid spine, and I've got one.
Thank you, Ms. Carver. Mr. Cragen.
Thank you. I think that one of the most important attributes of a city council member is someone who will obtain the most information possible. The council member needs to be someone who will listen to the citizens, who will make inquiry of experts, who will listen to the city staff. There are multiple councils and commissions that are in place in the city where opinions can be derived from. I think that if a council member will take the time obtain as much information as possible, and then act on what is learned that this city council can and will continue to make good informed decisions. The broader the range of information, the better decisions that will be made.
Thank you, Mr. Craig and Mr. Savage.
So we are elected representatives. If we're not representing, then we're not doing our job. So first and foremost, we need to actually get out and talk to people. We need to make sure that everything is being done not only openly, but we need to make sure that we are trying to get information. We need to make sure that you know when something is coming up. You would like to know when we're voting on some type of density development or internet fiber, all of that. We need to make sure that you know what's going on. So the first goal of a representative is to make sure you know enough to make a decision so that we can ask your opinion on it. And secondly, I agree, we need to make sure that in addition to that, we can get the best information possible, because good decisions are based on good information. And we need to make sure that we're not being one-sided about it. We need to be open-minded. I love that. We need to make sure that we're not digging trenches, that we are willing to talk and compromise and work through a problem rather than just stand in our corner and yell.
Thank you, Mr. Savage. Mr. Watson.
Thank you. So, yeah, I think the most important responsibility of a city council member is to listen to and represent the will of the citizens. And so I think it is imperative that we do that as a council member. I am willing to listen to citizens. I am willing to reach out and get input from citizens. One of the key areas that I want to focus on, and I'm always open to suggestions on how to do this, but is community outreach and involvement. I love that people have shown up. I would love to see this room packed with everyone coming and expressing their opinions and viewpoints. And I only think we are stronger as a city when we all participate and we become involved. But yeah, the number one qualification is to listen to and represent the will of the citizens.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Next question, we'll start with Mr. Mon. The question is, what can Syracuse do to attract more large commercial and retail development to the city and to maximize the commercial impact of the West Davis corridor?
This is a great question, because this is something that really drove me to run for a second term of city council, and something that I'm very passionate about. I look at our city and I say we have an opportunity. If we get this right, our city will be established well for years to come. If we get it wrong, we may look like others. Our neighbor, where the city that I came from, didn't do this well and suffered 20, 30 years of difficult commercial situations because they didn't develop near their exits properly. What I want to see us do is make sure that first and foremost, well, for starters, we don't develop businesses. The city does not own a business, they don't create them. So we need to make them possible. So I've already been working for 2 years with the UDOT people and making sure that the first thing that we can do is make sure that the property that's currently in their hands that will be determined as surplus after the highway is here will be readily available. If it's available, development can happen. And so we need to do everything we can to prepare for these opportunities.
Thank you, Mr. Mon. Ms. Carver?
In order for businesses to succeed, they need patrons. The West Davis corridor is going to end literally right over here before West Point. And that's not expected to be done until 2024. And then after that, they have hopes that it's going to go into Hooper and then ultimately curve back up and hit I-15. So my question is, who's going to patron these businesses? Businesses only want to go somewhere where they can make money. We only have people visiting Syracuse for about 6 weeks every year, and that is during October or the end of September for Black Island Farms, and once in a while for a bike race. We have to have something for them to want to come here, something that they don't already have there. So if we can find businesses that want to come out here that aren't already over there, then maybe we can get more people to want to drive the distance out here to do those kind of events or shopping or dining that they can do out here that they can't find closer to home. That's what you're fighting, is what they can already find closer to home.
Thank you, Ms. Carver. Mr. Cragen.
In fiscal year 2021, over 1 million people visited Antelope Island. That's 1 million people who are heading out that road that's just down the street from where we're at right now. That's where the opportunity will be. I think 4 things need to be done. 1, we need to ensure that our ordinances and application processes are business friendly. We need to communicate with landowners in the area to determine their plans for their property. If they're not interested in developing their ground, or there's not an immediate interest, then there may not be a business opportunity there right now. There needs to be a reach out to businesses who may be a good fit for our area. And I think that there needs to be work to foster better relationships between our local businesses and the citizens. Social media sometimes is not helpful in promoting business here in Syracuse, and there are ways that that can be combated and improved.
Thank you, Mr. Cragen. Mr. Savage.
When we built the Syracuse Island splash pad, the businesses around that saw record profits for that summer. I agree. You need to build something that brings someone to your city. We've talked a lot about the equestrian park. We need to make that better. The nice thing about all of that is people come here and they're here for the day. And so they're not just going to go home and eat. So we need to fix the equestrian park. In fact, all of our parks, we need some work. We've talked about the regional park. That will, if we can get tournaments here, same thing. That gets people here. You've heard rumors of the BMX park. Same race Saturdays will be a great draw, but we gotta do those things that bring people into the city and let them patron our restaurants. And then at the end of the day, they can go, and we're happy to have them here for a day. But at the end of the day, we don't have to build houses for every single one of them. So there's benefits to allowing people to come here, visit here, go to the island, recreate here, and we can enjoy the fruits of that.
Thank you, Mr. Savage. Mr. Watson.
Thank you. So we've already got a state attraction in Antelope Island that brings a lot of traffic into our area. One of the most important things I think that we need to do is we need to be prepared to allow for commercial development in appropriate areas when those landowners are ready to develop those areas. Antelope Drive is our prime commercial corridor. Right now, it is being cannibalized by high-density multifamily apartment developments. It's just not the highest and best use of the land along Antelope Drive. I think we have to be prepared to allow that commercial development to happen. As far as bringing in additional, doing additional things paid for by the city and citizenry to attract more things, I think if we're going to take that approach, we have to be willing to be transparent and allow the citizens to make a decision of whether they not want their tax dollars spent like that.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Mr. Gailey.
Prior to my administration, Syracuse City had no economic development plan. With the aid of the council, we put together an economic development plan. I was one of the founding 5 members of the North Davis Chamber of Commerce. And we took some heat from the Davis County Chamber of Commerce when we did that, because they saw us drawing away from them. But we thought this area needed more representation than we were being given by the Davis Chamber of Commerce. I have personal contacts with the manager of U.S. Cold Storage, Walmart, Smith's. I visit with them every time. They welcome me when I come in there and welcome me as mayor. So one of the things I have done is to try to become a friend of large businesses and even the small ones. My wife and I frequent every restaurant here on a rotational basis to try to make it good. And I would encourage all the rest of the residents to do that. That's what will make our economy better locally.
Thank you, Mr. Gailey. And the next question we'll start with Ms. Carver. The question is, what do you think the proper role of city government is?
I mean, I think that's been pretty clear from all of us. Nice to listen to the people who are in the city. I mean, everybody's got an idea of what they think should happen next, and just being able to understand people want to be heard and they want their view to be heard. And the most of emotion comes out when you're not listening to them. And another thing is just to protect Syracuse yourself. There will come a time when we are no longer on this planet, and that will be our children's children. What are they going to have left to develop if we develop all of it right now? Our job as elected officials is to maintain the integrity of the city, to give our children something that they can still build towards and not have to tear down all the buildings, like for them taking years, tear down all the buildings at the same time in 30, 40 years, because everything's going to crumble all at once because everything's been built at once.
Thank you.
Take that back, sorry, but
Mr. Cragen.
I think when considering what the proper role of city government is, it's helpful to look at all the different areas that city government deals with. That can be responsibility for parks and recreation, police and fire departments, housing services, emergency medical service, municipal courts, transportation services, and public works, which includes streets, sewers, snow removal, signage, and so forth. I think that the proper role for city government is to provide the best possible outcome for the citizens as a whole, and to do so in a financially responsible way. Again, if everybody acts together and works together, that can be done, but there is a very broad range of topics and issues that the city council needs to deal with. And it's important to have somebody there who will act and become familiar with all of those areas.
Thank you, Mr. Cragen. Mr. Savage.
I think the best thing that a city government can do is kind of get out of the way. And I say that meaning the first thing we need to do is sit down with the citizens, make a plan, make sure it's a good plan that the citizens can get on board with, and then put that plan in practice. What we should not do is do something called spot zoning, that every time someone shows up with a different development, to be like, oh yeah, we can make that one fit. Yeah, let's bring that one in too. We don't need to accept every development that comes into the community. We need to sit down, listen, make a plan, and then follow it. Don't just continue to accept anything that's put in front of the council. We need to primarily protect the citizens so that they can enjoy the Syracuse they moved to, while at the same time allowing for some growth and opportunities to help make their lives better.
Thank you, Mr. Savage. Mr. Watson.
Thank you. I think this question is a little bit different than, what is the purpose of a city council? This is, what is the purpose of city government? And in my opinion, the purpose of city government is to provide critical infrastructure for our citizens, roads, public utilities, public safety, those types of activities. And we have to do so in a fiscally responsible manner. So we have to evaluate what are our needs versus what are our wants and desires. We don't have an unlimited amount of resources unless we want to tax our citizenry at 100%. So we've got to provide critical infrastructure, and we've got to do it in a fiscally responsible way. And then once we've got those critical infrastructure things paid for, then we can look at those quality of life improvements, things like parks and recreation, those types of things. But thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Mr. Gailey.
First and foremost, the city should provide public safety. That's a given. And that is the role of the mayor, to provide for public safety. And then the quiet use of private property. I have to agree with my opponent. He is a member of the sewer board, and they deal with everything that we don't want to think about. And the services of the city are like that. You expect to go turn on a tap and you expect to have water. You expect to flush a toilet and not have any problems. You expect that if you have a problem that the fire department will respond to you in 5 minutes. Those are expectations that the city should quietly provide so that the residents can sleep quietly at night. And that is the mission of the city, is to provide those quietly.
Thank you, Mr. Gailey. Mr. Mon.
So I've written about this quite a bit over my time serving because I want people to understand what my perspective is on this. When it comes to government at all levels, I say that the role of government is to provide those things that we can do better together than we could do independently. If you can do this for yourself, government should get out of the way and let you. So we can't build a road, just the section road in front of my house, and my neighbor do the one in front of his. That would be a terrible road. So we should build roads. Things like water. I can't build my independent pipeline of water. I can't provide my own police force. Those are things we should do collectively because it makes financial sense and it makes for a better service. But when government starts taking on things that you can do for yourself, like telling you what plants you can put in your yard, I think they've gone too far. And I'm not suggesting that we're going there. My suggestion is that sometimes government gets into personal freedom, and I don't think that's right.
Thank you, Mr. Mon. We have 2 more questions left. This next question, we'll start with Mr. Cragen. What do you do when 50% of the constituency believes you should vote one way and 50% believes the opposite?
Well, first of all, I think that there needs to be a recognition that obviously there's an important issue and that there's a difference of opinion on that particular issue. After receiving input from the citizens, this is a little bit of what we've gone over before, but I do think that there needs to be input from the experts. There needs to be input again from city staff and input from others who are involved with the city, such as a planning commission or an architectural review committee, those kinds of people. And then based on that information, a decision needs to be made. And then I think what is maybe even more important is once the decision is made, to provide the public and the citizens with the information on why that particular decision was made in a particular way. I think that can help reduce the division that can exist and hopefully at least let people see that the decisions that are being made are being done in an appropriate manner.
Thank you, Mr. Cragen. Mr. Savage.
Yeah, I actually agree with much of what was just said. It's really comes down to the fact that if it's so divided, I think it's time to sit down and look at what is the priority, and the priority has to be the citizens. And so, man, if you've done your homework and everybody is exactly 50-50 on this, I want to make sure that the data is out there. And when I finally make my vote, it'll be based on what I think is the best for the future of the citizens of the community. And so, man, if it's just a toss up, and I don't believe it should just be a coin toss. I think you need to make an informed decision based on what will be the best for the citizens in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Savage. Mr. Watson.
Thank you. Yeah, so if there is really a 50-50 split in the constituency, I believe that we need to work to find where the common ground is. So we all have very strong opinions to begin with, I think. And as we learn and educate ourselves and evaluate the situation, I always think there's room to find common ground and compromise. And what is one side willing to maybe give up, and what can the other side maybe give up to find a solution that may not be exactly what both sides want, but could be a solution that would work for everyone. If we take an example of looking at developing a parcel of land, maybe the citizens are divided on whether or not they want a type of development. Maybe we need to involve the landowner and developers and the citizenry and come up with a solution that works better for everyone. So
I like his answer even better. Can I have that one?
No.
Yeah, I stole yours.
Thank you, Mr. Watson.
Teamwork.
We'll go to Mr. Gailey now.
I agree with Councilman Mon. I think the best way, if it's a 50-50 tie, is to have a policy. And baseball solved that a long time ago. Tie goes to the runner. So the runner in this case is the landowner. And I've had to vote one time, and it was a 50-50 split, and I voted tie goes to the runner. I would vote for the landowner because he has his rights are first in line.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gailey. Mr. Mon?
Well, considering all of the things that we face, I would love to see something that was that close because we've never had anything that was literally 50-50. And with respect to that, I think that part of it comes from communication. When I hear people say, oh, I'm really on one side, but I think they've lost part of the information, I share that. And when we share that, you start to find commonality. So when one group comes and says they have a real strong opinion one way and another is the exact opposite, if you can start to find where the common ground is, maybe there is one solution we can all buy into. Now, I'm not talking about just completely disregarding things. I'm saying that people have a tendency to listen to what the core value is that they're trying to resolve. And when you really want something good, you can find common ground.
Thank you, Mr. Mon. Ms. Carver?
If you're in a 50-50 split, you haven't done enough homework. That's simple as that. You haven't looked at the unintended consequences enough of things. I think positives are not deal breakers. You can go on and on about how great your side is, but until you start looking at the negative aspects of things, those are positives for an individual person or a positive for an individual person. But once the negativity comes down into it, when they start realizing the unintended consequences of it, it can have a ripple effect. And one of the things I've noticed that it's not going on is that the unintended consequences of things aren't being paid attention to. Negatives are deal breakers, folks. Positives are not.
Thank you, Ms. Carver. Final question. This will start with Mr. Savage. What is your opinion of the apartments being built in the city, and does Syracuse need more?
So first, let me say there is a place for apartments in Syracuse. But what we don't need is to build 1,000 of them at the same time. I am happy to welcome some of these new residents to our community. These are going to be extremely nice apartments. I wouldn't call them affordable housing. I lived in an apartment for the several years of my marriage, and we had a great time there. But at the same time, we don't need to build all of them at the same time. I do think we'll have a problem if we build all of the apartments this year, which currently we're doing, contrary to my vote. In 20 to 30 years, which is the average life of one of these buildings, they will all be falling apart at the same time. And that's not a good thing for Syracuse. We need to moderate our approach on this. If we're going to allow apartments in Syracuse, we need to do it in a very planned and intentional manner. Now, I don't think we need tons of apartments in Syracuse. I think we need to be careful and try and keep the charm of Syracuse to be the community that it's been for the past 100 years. But we can allow some of these people to join our community as well.
Thank you, Mr. Savage. Mr. Watson?
Thank you. Yeah, and in regards to apartments, I don't think the argument is that the people that live in apartments are undesirable. I would think that most of us have lived in an apartment at some time in our life. For me, it really is, does that type of building fit within our city? Does it fit within our general plan? How is it going to tax our infrastructure? How's it going to affect traffic, water pressure, all these things that these large multifamily developments can impact a city. So I don't think that Syracuse is the ideal place for high density apartment housing. We don't have, any large public transportation centers here. In the places that these are being built, they're not walkable communities, those types of things. So there may be places where apartments could fit into the city. If they're being proposed and if the citizenry around those areas would like them, I'm not opposed to considering them. But for the most part, I think the city is more geared towards single family residence, townhomes, those types of structures.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Mr. Gailey?
In my first meeting with the city manager back 4 years ago, I told him that I wanted my administration to bring financial stability because we knew we were losing R.C. Willey, which had been a great funding source for the city. We knew that was going to happen. I didn't drive it away. That decision was made in a former administration. So we got together with Zions Bank and we built a tool. that said, what if? We could ask it what if questions. What if we built no apartments in Syracuse? What would that have the effect of that be on financial stability? Every one of the council as it currently sits and myself sat in that meeting, and we all agreed that we needed to have some apartments somewhere to provide financial stability. So the resulting apartments were all agreed upon at one point in time that there would be apartments along there. It has stood vacant for 20 years looking for commercial buyers, but the market just wouldn't bear that. So, but I do think that we are finished. I don't think there's many more places in Syracuse that we would desire apartments, nor would the council, I think, approve them.
Thank you, Mr. Gailey. Mr. Mon.
Well, I thought we were done with apartments a long time ago but we keep seeing them every meeting. There's a new proposal to stick them in our city center, to stick them in any corner they can find up by the schools. I think that as long as we allow it, they'll keep building them. The point, I think, is that we have to plan for every type of housing. I'm not against any particular type of housing. I would venture to say that it's quite possible I've lived in more types of housing than anybody else up here. I spent an entire summer in a tent several times. So I've lived in a trailer. I've lived in an apartment. I've lived in townhomes. I've lived in it all. But the point is, I'm not judging what it is. I'm judging the fit. That's what a city council's job is. Where does it fit? How does it benefit the community? And where should it go so that it doesn't infringe on other people's rights? And I think that we've overbuilt in 1 year. There's too much at one time, and it's going to come back to haunt us.
Thank you, Mr. Mon. Ms. Carver.
I think Antelope Road in the Syracuse section is starting to look a whole lot like Hillfield between 193 and I-15. That's not a good thing. It's not the best part of Layton, and it seems to go downhill a little more every year. I'm not saying that's what will happen here. I'm just saying we're getting very close to looking like something very similar. And like I said before, I'm always willing to learn from other cities about what is a good idea to do and what's not a good idea to do. East of the liquor store, for example, is not a good idea for apartment complexes. And I promise if that comes up, if I am elected, I will always vote no on that. I have yet to find a liquor store, the apartment complexes next door where a cop has not been shot at. I don't need this.
Thank you, Ms. Carver. Mr. Cragen.
Yes, I think it's hard to adequately answer this question in 1 minute. I have a much more detailed answer with a shameless plug at my webpage, www.votebrettcragen.com. But it does go through this information very carefully. I think both professional planning strategies and studies and our city plan provide for higher density housing. I do think there's a place for apartments in Syracuse. We do have a lot of those projects in process. I believe going forward, we need to closely consider new apartment projects in the near future. But I think each project needs to be evaluated on its own merits and its own benefits. And that's what a city council is there for, is to determine what and where and the best fit. And that's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cragen. Thank you all of you for participating tonight. So, all these questions were presented from citizens. We gather them from citizens. We'll give each of you 1 minute closing statements. We'll start with Mr. Watson and go in reverse order of what we did opening statements. So Mr. Watson, and then work your way down to Mr. Gailey. So Mr. Watson, 1 minute.
Thank you. Thank you for those that put this event together, and thank you for those that are here in attendance and those that will watch the recorded version. If there's anything I want those that are listening to take away from this, is that I feel like I am like a lot of the citizens out there, that they see the direction our city is headed and they don't necessarily agree with it. I happen to engage in the process and felt like my voice was not heard. I was not represented. And so I want those citizens that vote for me, I want them to know that I will be your voice. I want to hear from you. I want to engage you. I want you to be involved in any matter that's important to you. And I'm committed to doing that if elected to your city council. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Mr. Savage.
So I just want to say that I have loved serving on the city council. I enjoyed sitting down with you guys, and I think we came to some great conclusions. Unfortunately, other members of the city council didn't agree. I loved sitting down with the equestrian folks, and we came to some great conclusions there too, that we were able to kind of revamp the plan. I pride myself on being able to sit down with anyone in the community to sit and talk to you about what it is you feel is important. And I want to point out I've done that, and I will continue to do that. I think Syracuse has a great charm to it, and I'm committed to protecting that. I can also say that I have kept every promise that I've made since being elected to city council. I ran on a platform of improving parks, improving infrastructure, listening and working to the best interest of the community. And I feel like I've done that, and I will continue to do that. And again, thank you for your vote last time, and hopefully we can do this again.
Thank you, Mr. Savage. Mr. Cragen.
Yes, thank you. I would also like to thank Mr. Hellwell, Ms. Lisenby, Mr. Baker, and Mr. Johnson for putting this on. This is an important undertaking. And again, I appreciate everybody's involvement here tonight. I'll make the same plea that I have from earlier meetings. Please, everyone who is listening, carefully consider the candidates and make sure and vote for the one who most fits with what your viewpoints are. I can commit to working hard. If I am elected, I will try to be prepared, and I will do the best I can to listen to the citizens, listen to the experts, and make good decisions for the city of Syracuse. Regardless of who you vote for, please vote. Please encourage your friends and neighbors to vote. As I've said before, this is an important election with important issues that will have an influence on Syracuse for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cragen. Ms. Carver.
Yes, you guys, please go vote. I have a hard time selling myself. I don't know, if you go do your research on your people and stuff, I'm a logical, straightforward person, and I think the most important thing is the people are more important in that aspect. And as much as we keep talking about bringing in business, I'm going to take this last second to throw my own plug that the rodeo industry is $1 billion a year road industry. Oops.
Thank you, Ms. Carver. Mr. Mon.
One thing that I came to city government with was a commitment that I would serve. I would do the work. I made a goal that I would be the hardest working person in city government of all the elected officials. Whether I made it there or not, that's not my point. My point is I would never stop trying to get as much information, to bring as much to the table as I could, prepared for every meeting. Now, consequently, there have been jabs taken at me that maybe I think that I'm too intelligent or know too much. I don't think that at all. I think I actually have to work for the information that I go out and get. I talk to as many different people as I can so that I'm representing as many different people as I can. So the jabs that just have divided us have led us to 2 years of a lot of 3-2 votes. And instead, we really could be people looking to try and figure out what we can do together and how we can together serve all the people.
Thank you, Mr. Mon. Mr. Gailey.
I want to thank Carrie Ann, Ken, Craig, and Myron. I know you all personally. Thank you for setting this up. May I do a kind of a public service announcement? Many of you in your homes have our signs in the park strip. That is actually city property, and would you please move them back towards on the other side of the sidewalk on your property? And then I'd like to invite you to a Zoom meeting that we'll have on Thursday night at 8 o'clock. You'll find that invite on the social media pages here in Syracuse. We'd love to have you. I really have no idea why Councilman Mon questions my leadership. He's not talked to me once in 2 years about how I'm failing the city. So that's about all I have to say. Again, thank you, Carrie, for putting this together.
thank you again, all of you, for participating tonight and for being candid in your answers. We really appreciate it. And I hopefully it will help the citizens to make a good advised vote, and hopefully everyone will turn out to vote. Thank you again. Thanks all those who have participated tonight.
Just touch that, nobody further.
Chairs away. He's great.
Okay, I'm gonna go over my kids there. I bet he's still loving it. Thank you guys, have a good night.
Someday I'm gonna figure out what I have.